technical. Guess it'll be that screen. Kind of hard to see. What happened to you? There we go. Is that?
Yep, that's good.
Should I turn my, do I need to have my,
You want to minimize that?
whoops,
Oops,
hit the wrong button. Isn't technology fun?
yeah. Okay, your share.
Okay. I'm gonna just move this so it's not in the way. Hit that button. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope that you can apply pretty much anything that I say to wildlife, because I understand most of you are wildlife photographers, but who hasn't been asked by someone to take a picture of them? Hey, can you take a picture real quick? Or hey, I need a new headshot, or my family needs a new picture. So you can take some tips from this, hopefully, and get good lighting on them. Whoops. Now I'm no longer on this. There we go. A little bit about me. My dad is Jim Griggs. I feel like I'm always walking in his shadow, but that's okay. He's a good photographer. He had my camera always pointed at wildflowers and nature. So as a rebellion, I became a portrait photographer. I am certified through the PPA with a CPP. I'm only one of 20 in our state. This year, I also earned my craftsman degree, which means I went around and taught 15 classes around the US, mostly on wedding photography, but also this natural light photography class that you see here. I do have a BS in commercial and portrait photography from the University of Central Missouri. That's about what it amounts to now is BS, but back in those days, you had to know what you're doing, right? Film, dark rooms, it was fun. I learned on the Photoshop. No numbers, no letters, just Photoshop. It was awful. And I am on the board for the Professional Photographers of Nebraska. I'm happy to help institute more learning and helping embrace the beginners through the intermediate photographers learning more that they need to know. This is just some examples I thought I should open up. Like, I am a pretty lazy person. I don't like carrying any extra equipment that I don't have to. So when I leave my house, I want to carry just my camera. Like, I don't want a light, I don't want a tripod, I'm just super minimalistic that way, I guess. So these are all different techniques I've used, and we'll go over them all. In my portrait business, I mean, I literally don't carry a flash with me unless I have to. I hate it. So the biggest example and best way to embrace natural light photography is to find open shade. Open shade means that the sky at least a 45-degree angle from your client person is open, meaning no trees, no buildings, it's wide open sky. So this beautiful subject of ours is my neighbor, and one day I asked her to run around town with me and let me take pictures of her in all these scenarios. So the posing's not necessarily the best because we had an hour to get all of these done. And so then I would do a pullback with my phone so you could see what open shade looks like. So as you can see, the sky in front of her is open. There's no building. She's sitting in front of the building. The building is casting the shade. This is going to give you the best, most even light you can look for anywhere. And so as you can see, like, you can see her eyeballs. That's one thing when you're looking at doing portrait photography is you want to be able to see eyeballs. We want to try and avoid the raccoon eyes from straight on sun or directly overhead light. So as you can see her eyeballs. She's there. This is pretty easy. If you are looking for a go-to, go find some open shade. This is another example of how I've worked it into my wedding business. And behind them is the beautiful scenery. In front of them is a big wide open field that's giving them the open shade and the light onto their faces. And I don't have to have a light. It looks beautiful because this background is dark. And I also hate editing. So I'm not going to do anything that I have to fix in post, just as a heads up. This is Almost everything you see is straight out of camera for me because I hate editing. Here's another example of open shade, but this is when it's not quite as great because the shade, there's still some trees just a little bit in front of her, so she's not getting the full open shade. You can see then that the background starts to get blown out a little bit. And as we know, your eye will automatically go to the brightest spot on every page, so you don't want your backgrounds to get blown out. So that's where the open shade is the key. Here's a great example of open shade. The building's there, but we're using the trees, of course, as leading lines, and it just helps. But she's walking, open shade above her. There's open shade behind her, so it's lighting the background. But it's not blown out. It's all a consistent exposure with that. So the key, open shade. Now here's an example of open shade gone wrong. She's in the shade, but she's facing the building. Where I'm standing in the picture in the cell phone shot, I'm standing with my back against the building, taking the picture of her. And see what happens? She's in the shade, so when I expose for her skin, the background goes far out. And that's a pretty cool background, so we might not want to lose it by getting blown out. So what do? We rotate her. And now she has this, it's kind of a boring background, but she at least has light on her face and you can see the background. If you want a texture from the background, that helps. With again, just all open shade. But what's great is when you're working with buildings or even with trees, you can do what's called subtractive lighting. And that's where you're literally taking the light, you're stopping the light from coming back onto her face. So because she's standing there next to that black window and the sun is coming from over on this side, it's lighting this side of her face and the other side is going to shade. So you're getting a nice ratio in your lighting and it gives the depth and dimension that you would be looking for in a portrait, is having shade or a shadow side and a light side. It also it's a good way to create shape and figure within your subject if you need to. And that's simply by just putting her against a building, or this also works well with doorways. You can use a doorway as your subtractive lighting. This is subtractive lighting again, but on a lesser scale because I've moved her out. So she's getting more of that wraparound lighting onto her face, but there's still a shadow side because there's that building that's stopping the light from coming back to her. So the light is not coming and bouncing back and hitting her face as much. Does this all make sense? Mm-hmm. It's and then don't worry, we have some downtown shots and then we have some wild out in the wild in the grass and trees. Now reflective lighting is probably my favorite because I like a well-lit face. So all you do is you go to your open shade and go to the very edge and make sure concrete is in front of them. And that's going to naturally just bounce the light off of the concrete back up into their face. So you get this really nice flattering light because their chin is lit, but there's still a little bit of shadow because it's not as much light as it's coming from above, but it lights up their face. It also is a great way because then your background goes a little bit darker because you're exposing for a lighter subject. I love reflective lighting. Like I spend my life looking for grass with a sidewalk right in front of it. And then I put my client in the grass and the sidewalk is going to reflect that light up into them. It also keeps them from turning green from the reflection of the grass up onto their faces. I don't know if anyone's ever photographed someone standing in a field, in a green field, and you're like, why are they so green? Or your color balance is all off. That's because the light is reflecting off the grass up into their face. Here's another open shade. This is a great example of how to use it in downtown spaces. Just go to where you're in the back alley, if that's safe. And then stick your client there, or your dog, or your cousin, or whoever you want to photograph that day, and the background will go dark and your subject will be well lit. Here's some excellent example of reflective lighting from out in my wild. So the couple is standing in the shade, they're backlit, and how this works is because there is a whole lot of white cement in front of them that is reflecting that sun back down onto the cement up into their faces. So that way we can have a backlight and still be able to have fully exposed faces. It's a magical thing, this reflective lighting. And this couple, or the family pose, that's backlit as well. You can see the sun's coming in from behind, but there was 8 rows of white chairs in front of them. And I thought I had won the jackpot that day, because I was like, how am I going to be able to do this with the backlight? And they wanted everything at the altar. And then I saw those white chairs and I was so excited. I took everything there and I didn't have to use a flash. I mean, I had my flash in my bag if I needed it, but I could just do it. Like, we just ran right through it. It was spectacular. And everyone's face is well lit because of those white chairs. Here's just, again, some more examples with a little bit of the subtractive lighting, because we have the building over on this side. Over on this side, I forget it's over on this side. So it's subtracting the light from her face and it's giving her a little more depth and dimension. Again, we're just have open shade, nothing in front of her. We could maybe say that there's a little bit of reflective, but it's going to be pretty minimal because what's in front of her is a dark surface. So that you can see under her chin, there's a shadow. If we had good reflective lighting, there would be a shadow there. So you can use it to your advantage. If you have someone that's really self-conscious of their chin, make sure that there's not a white thing in front of them. You can make sure there's a dark thing in front of them. And then it won't reflect as much back up into their chin. You can hide it a little bit more. So here she is out in the wild, in the park. This is an excellent example of using the open shade in the park. So the trees are all behind her. She's on the edge of the shadow from the sun. So she's on the edge of the shade. She's a little more than on the edge, but she's a little bit further back, but that's generally what's happening there. And so then she has all this in front of her that's wide open. So the light is coming straight onto her face and I don't have to do anything afterwards. Here we are using the subtractive lighting and the open shade. The background gets blown out a little bit here, but that's mostly because there's nothing in the background. So we don't have a lot of choice. These were also all shot at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is how I get around having to shoot in the evening all the time as well. But see, if I move her inside, it's a little bit, we get a little bit more subtractive lighting, but it's not as nice of light on her face because it's so much shade, not enough light. And then the background gets blown out as well. Here's some more just out in the trees. And what's great about open shade is that you can rotate your client and get different looks. So in the first one, the sun is, or the light is hitting her full on. And then I just had her turn a little and now we've created a shadow side and a light side from the shade. And that's literally, she's in the same spot and she just rotated. Now I have 2 different pictures, two different lighting scenarios, and I didn't move. I don't know if I mentioned, but I don't like doing more than I have to, right? Like, and every time you have to move, then you have to pick up everything and reposition. So if you can put your client in one spot and do a variety of pictures, it works better for them and for you, especially if you're working with brides that have big dresses. Like I spend my days looking for open shade for that, so I don't have to move their dress more than once. Because once you get it all spread out, you want to be able to do like crop circles around her, photographing all the way around. Here's a bad use of open shade. Do you see how she's so far back in the shade? And all this in front of her. Oh, this is really a very in focus picture.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the projector is apparently not focused.
Well, just know that they're all in focus. I promise. You can come look at my screen.
They look great on.
But see how she's so far back in the shade that there's nothing then hitting her because it's all shade. She's so far back that then when we photograph it, we can take the picture still, but our background gets blown out and we don't get to see as much. Here we are again with the reflective lighting, which we can again backlight her hair so you get some beautiful light on her hair and get a shot aside with the reflections coming up to light up her face. And then we have reflectors. This is a super, if I'm gonna carry something, I have this. It fits in my bag, it's this big. But it folds up so it fits in my easy strap bag. And you can use these in so many great ways. So in the first picture, you can see up here in the top, the mom's holding the reflector. She's not holding it properly. She's just holding it there because I told her to put it down for a second so we can take this before and after picture. But you can see like there's no light on her face. Her back's all bright and it's not great lighting, right? But then when the mom puts the gold, so the sun is coming from behind her, hits the gold and then goes back onto her face, it's the same color temperature as the setting sun. So then in the middle picture and then on the end, you can see that it's a little better lit and you can see her face. And that's just from using a gold reflector. Now, if gold is too bright, sometimes it is. These are awesome and have a white side. So you can use white as well. So it's a little less of a thing. Or if you're like me and sometimes you forget your reflector, if you just need a piece of foam core in your car, then you can use this as a reflector. And these are great, especially if you are doing headshots, because if you hold it like right here with your open light, you get that beautiful clamshell lighting that is what everyone wants in a headshot, because the light is coming from here and then it's reflecting back up into here. You get well lit sockets and under the chin. So it's really a very flattering light and all they have to do is stand here like this. It's pretty spectacular. And I'm trying to think, we could do it with a flashlight or a phone light. You can see and say, yeah, do you have a, you can see the difference that it will make. So I'll be the sun. I'm the sun, right? This is the sun. It's lighting my face, it's fine. We'll pretend like it's not harsh lighting, we'll pretend it's very pretty. But when I put this up here, then it's gonna reflect back up into my face. Do you see the difference? It's minimal, but it's enough, especially when we have proper lighting, that it makes a really big difference. And gives a very nice, almost like a beauty dish look, where it's very flattering for everyone. Everyone. And all they have to do is hold this, or if you have an assistant that wants to hold it, but most of the time I don't have an assistant with me unless it's wedding day. But for headshots, they can hold it here, and then that's also giving them a natural pose. And they then know what to do with their hands. Because how many times do you get this? What do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do with these. So this gives them something to do when you're doing a headshot. They just go like this, and then, well, there's our headshot. No, it's okay. What's great about the reflectors is you can also use them as a scrim. So that means you're blocking the light from coming through. So you can see that the mom is using it here, and she's blocking the light, so then I can have a nice even light across her face without having to use any flash or anything. And it keeps from having the hot spots. She has a little bit still on her shoulder just because we didn't have her position just properly, the mom position just properly with this. This reflector is a 5-in-1 reflector. So It has a naturally built-in scrim right here, that's the base. This is a scrim. It also has silver, if you need more silver tone, and it has black, so you can do your own subtractive lighting. Then you just hold it up against them and you have a subtractive lighting with the black out. These are pretty handy. They're not super expensive. They're on Amazon or B&H or any of the places you get your camera equipment. And then they fold up and they're pretty small. But like I said, you don't have a reflector. I have been known to make people with white t-shirts stand on the opposite side of my subject because I need a little bit of a reflection to create a good ratio. So white t-shirt, a blanket. You can also use a blanket for the reflective lighting sitting on the grass too. If you put it out a little bit ahead in front of your subject, then it will work as the reflector back up. It also will block the green grass. I'm afraid this is gonna like explode when I'm not watching. I once was driving down the road with my friend and we were in the backwoods, Missouri. It was kind of a sketch area. And all of a sudden my reflector popped open in my back seat and we both almost had a heart attack. There was a lot of screaming and we had to pull over for a minute. They just like it just popped open. I don't know. We'd been driving for like 6 hours and then it decided to pop open. But so that's how you can use just really basic. Like I said, I don't want to carry anything I don't have to. So having all this extra, I don't want to carry it. Just this one little reflector. And it doesn't need to be that big to get the job done.
What happens to your case?
For the reflector?
Yeah.
Well, I'll lose it, so I just take it out. I'm kind of hard on my equipment, I guess. I don't know. It's just easier this way. I'll lose it. It's probably in the back of my car somewhere. I don't know. I do use lens caps, so I feel like I'm doing good there. I keep track of all my lens caps, but reflector case, no, that's fine. And there is actually, if you look really closely on it, there's a stain from my bug spray. It all gets thrown in the back of the car and that's fine. The bug spray is now in a Ziploc bag. I learned that lesson, but so the other option that you have with natural light is window light, and window light is my favorite light of all times. It creates the best lighting because it's already being diffused through there unless you have direct sun. But all 4 of these shots, the same, like they're within 5 minutes of each other. So in the one where she's putting the earring on, she's standing in front of the window. So it's a very flat, very flattering light. And I can get it and she can move and I don't have to worry about shadows and things like that. Then I had her sit down in the chair. And then this one down here where she was putting on her shoe, but then she stopped and admired the beautiful shoes. They were really cool shoes. But we have a really nice coming in from one side and a shadow side. It's not a super shadow because we have the white dress reflecting up, but also I have her placed, if you look at the top picture here, at the back of the window. So when you put your client or your subject towards the back of the window, what's happening is all the light that's coming in is wrapping around and lighting up your entire subject, rather than if you put them at the middle, then there's not as much light here to wrap around. But if you put them back here, the light will wrap all the way around and give you that nice shadow side and subtle shadow side and bright side. And then you can go from the side and like a bit of a silhouette. It's not a full silhouette, but a bit of a silhouette. You can get different lighting scenarios really quickly just at one window by where you position yourself or where you position your subject. I put that little diagram up there because, again, if you'll see, they have the subject at the back end of the window. So someone I once heard said, when you use soft boxes, you should always put it at the back of the shoulder and then the rest of the boxes in front of them. It's the same way with a window light. You put your subjects shoulder at the back of the window. And then all this light will walk around. If I was doing a portrait, like not a wedding day, but someone's headshot at the same spot, I would probably bring them a step away from the light, still having them be sideways, but I'd pull up my handy dandy white reflector and reflect a little bit more light in so I wouldn't get quite such a harsh shadow. So it's pretty easy. Just stick them at the back of the window. And then you can easily have 3 or 4 people in there and they're getting the same light all the way across. Or make them stand facing the window. You're between the window and the light for the subject, the window and the subject. And if all else fails, stand in the sun. You can stand in the direct sun. This is, I know people say that you shouldn't do this. But if you know the rules, you can break them, right? That's the rule. So I give my seniors, especially sunglasses. I have them bring their sunglasses. And we just stand in the direct sun. And then what happens is that you get beautiful skies because the sky is well lit and you're exposing for the sky and the skin was most of the time the same exposure then. And so you get beautiful skies, especially if you have a cool clouds and you want to get them, just have them stand there in the sun, put their sunglasses on or have them look away like they're serious. Have them adjust their tie, look this way, get the whole thing. It's okay to stand directly in the sun as long as you aren't photographing them straight on. So they have the thing, the raccoon eyes that we want to avoid. Here's what not to do. I sometimes make mistakes or I purposely put people in the wrong spot so I can have pictures for slides like this. This is a really cool bridge. It's deep in a forest. We have to hike a little ways to get there. It's a fun adventure. But that would be the way that some people would do it. She's facing the forest. And there's do you see the light on the bridge behind her? That would be really what we'd want. So just by rotating her, that's a more flattering picture for her. Before she has, see the raccoon eyes, it's deep shadows. It's not great. I could, sure, I could bring up the shadows some, but it's not gonna recover her eyeballs. But just by rotating her, we can see her, all of her expression, all of her features. And that's again, just using the open shade by rotating and having the forest behind her and the open sky in front of her. And it wasn't a lot. You can see in this picture, we're talking about what, 2 feet of open sky that we had open light to her face. So it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little. And then there comes this magical time of the night. Most people, I think, call it like the blue hour, where the sun is down and you're like, yes, it's nice light. I'm gonna backlight him and it's gonna be beautiful. And I've got this beautiful white road right in front of him. It's not great because the sun's too low and now there's nothing reflecting up onto his face. So essentially you're just backlighting him. So instead, I turn him around. I mean, this is literally in the same spot. He just turned around, buttoned up his shirt, and now he's facing the sun. And he's beautifully lit. It's pretty flat lighting, but almost everyone is flattering and flat lighting. It's a very easy lighting to nail down pretty quickly and to be flattering for everyone. Oh, well, that was the end. That was the last slide. Okay, wait, before we go on, does anyone have any questions? Like, I'm happy to like show you how to pose or put up the light or stand in the light. Does anyone have any specific questions?
This picture on our right,
Yeah,
the well lit one,
yeah.
is the sun hitting more on the ground?
The sun
Obviously
is,
not across him.
no, the sun is essentially gone. Like it is,
Okay.
you know, it's like the, just like right when it's just below everything and give that like light that you can use all the time that we all love.
So you effectively got the whole sky as your
Yeah.
light source.
Cause he's standing in the middle of a gravel road, just standing there. I mean, there's a forest behind him, but a forest that's planted in rows, cause that's what we do in Nebraska. Our trees just don't grow, so you have to put them there. Yeah, so that's it, yeah, it's way back there. Then you just turn them and face it into it, and it doesn't hurt their eyes. You know how like when there's a time in sunset when it's not pleasant to look into it. It's still, if you're shooting in sunset hour, it's still hurting your eyeballs to look towards the sun. This is when it's down past that and you can look in the direction.
Are you spot metering on the subject's face, or are you using a more evaluative metering?
Well, yeah, we'll say I'm spot metering. I use my own brain. Like I literally can walk into almost any room and tell you what the exposure is going to be. It's a fine-tuned art that I think is actually just inherited like through my DNA. My dad passed it down to me, but I do use I use shoot mirrorless cameras. So the exposure, I know that it's nailed when I'm in there, but I don't carry a meter because that's another piece of equipment I have to carry. Yeah. My dad put a lot of I spent most of my life waiting and rest stops for the light to be just right. You know, I literally spent 2 hours on an overlook in Hawaii waiting for the light to get just right. So the light is a very important thing to me. And I have spent 24 years embracing that and really honing in on how to make the light work for me and not against me. So I don't have to wait for 2 hours. I will. When we go to Tanzania, we wait for as long as it takes. Sometimes you just sit for an hour because you know that lion's gonna go chase something. Any other questions about, yeah.
How are you balancing the aperture with such low light from the sun?
So
High ISO.
sometimes, yeah, I'm not afraid to live in an ISO of 1600. I hope I didn't give anyone a heart attack. I have a friend who refuses to go above 400 and she'll look at my exposure and be like, what are you doing? Like, how can you do that? It's just life. You put some lens correction on it after in the whatever that's called in Lightroom and it looks fine. So yeah, sometimes I am, but I also shoot at a pretty low aperture. Like this kid is probably, well, I'm shooting on 70 to 200, almost always exclusively for my portraits. I will break into a 24 to 70 if I want that wide angle look, but so most of the time I'm shooting at about 3.2. And like this kid right here, it was probably at 800 or yeah, it's probably at about 800 and 1/60th of a second. And f3.2 or f4. I never shoot the lens wide open, as far as open as it will go. It's never going to be tacked sharp. You should always be at least half a stop down from your widest aperture in my rules. And then your aperture should always also match the number of subjects in your image. So if you're photographing one person, you can shoot at 1.8. I wouldn't recommend it, just so that you have more, because at 1.8, sometimes the nose and the eyes are in focus, but sometimes they're not, so you want to make sure that you're focusing on the eyes, but that then if you start adding people into the picture, you're shooting a family of 4, you need to be at least at f4. If you're shooting a family of 8, you need to be at least f8. And I keep that rule very solid until you get to about f11, and then pretty much everyone's in the picture unless you have them on 17 steps. Then you just crank it up to 22 and adjust otherwise. Was that more than you asked for? I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, I like the shooting the number of people matching your aperture is key, I feel like, to making sure that everyone in your picture is going to be in focus. And that's what people are paying you for, or you want to at least provide. I don't know. I don't want my back, unless you don't like that guy that's back there, then shoot at f1.8. But
So if you've got 4 people in the picture, but in 2 rows, you shoot
F4.
2.8 or
no,
Three.
f4. No, it's the number of people,
period.
period.
Okay,
Unless, I mean, like, unless you have a great distance between them, right? Like, if I'm here and he's there, then we're gonna need to have, if we want both of us in focus, we're gonna need to have more, but no, generally, as long as you, if you're worried about it, just add another click to it. 4.5, 5.6,
okay,
it's all about the same. I mean, especially when you're dealing with natural light, until you get to this scenario where it's dark, you have the range, because if you're using that open shade, it's pretty bright. And so most of the time when I'm in the open shade, I'm shooting at ISO 200 or 400. And then I can be at that f3 aperture, 3.2 or 2.8, 3.2. And then I just adjust my shutter speed based on what's happening there. I use R6s, the Canon R6, for 97% of my work. And if you're using a mirrorless camera with a mirrorless lens, so like the RF lenses for Canons, you can hand hold those babies down to 1/60th of a second. Not 1/1/60th, or just 60th of a second. Because the IS, internal stabilization, talks to each other. I mean, I shoot weddings in dark churches. And if it's the groups, I use flash and everything, but during the ceremony, I don't use any lights. So I'm often hand holding at 1/60th of a second, which scared me for the first 3 weddings I shot. Because, you're always told like your shutter speed needs to be twice the focal length of your lens. So if your longest lens is 200, you should be shooting at 1/400th of a second. But it's not always possible in a church that has 3 windows and it's a cloudy day. So. Any other questions? Were there any questions
There are no questions on the web.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, have I succeeded or have I failed?
Are you shooting raw? You said you don't like to.
Yeah, I do still shoot raw because,
You still have to edit that.
yeah, I run it. So I do, I use an AI editing software called Polar Next. It's pretty spectacular. Today they launched a culling app or a culling side to it. Even more spectacular because I test drove it for them. So I run it through that, like through the AIS software. I don't have to do very much. I edit, it brings it up, it picks 12 in the 12 different lighting scenarios you might have. You edit those 12 and then it applies it to everything. It's pretty spectacular.
What's it called again? Polar?
Polar Next, POLARRNEXT. It's a very new editing AI software. I just met them in January. And I've been working with them one-on-one to tweak everything, make it perfect. If you're shooting a lot of portraits that need a lot of retouching, eVoto is the other one that people like to use because it will do more skin retouching and hair flyaways.
ePhoto.
eVoto, EVOTO. I haven't myself used it because like I said, I shoot mostly weddings. So we don't do extensive retouching on our weddings. Just on my portraits.
I use Evoto.
You do? Do you like it?
It's game changing.
That's what a lot of my all portrait friends say. The ones that are doing a lot of seniors. It's just however many images you export, right? You pay per export.
Yeah, you pay credit.
Yeah. So, Polar Next is a flat, you either pay per image you export or it's a flat rate for the unlimited exports. Any other questions? Do I need to go back to any slides? No? Okay. Okay. And then finally, this is my Instagram. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, I would love to have you as a follower. I'll follow you back. I post every Sunday morning after a wedding. And then whenever I can remember after that. And then I did take over my dad's business of leading the Tanzanian safaris. So if you are interested at all in joining us to Tanzania, It's gonna be a really good time. We're going in April. That is the rainy season. If you do any reading, don't panic. It rains like it rains in Colorado. 30 minutes in the afternoon. And guess what? The animals don't go anywhere. They stand out in the rain. It's low. So, right now, the safari in April is going to be a very small, intimate one. I'll take more if anyone else wants to come. I'd love to have you. It's a life-changing experience. And sometimes you just get lucky with the light there because it's beautiful all the time. Any other questions about Tanzania, about my dad? You need to know his deep, dark secrets?
How about the O?
Oh, yeah, okay, so we have, our daughter is 20 and her name's Olympia, and so when you start with a name like Olympia, you can't follow that up with like Bob, you know? Like, we had to come up with something else, and she's named after the capital of Washington, because we visited there before she was born and love it, and we are kind of obsessed with capitals. That's where we go on vacations, is to the capitals. And I wanted another O name. We literally Googled O capitals to see what other there was. And Oslo is pretty much the only one. There's like a 26 letter long one for Jamaica. So we skipped that one. And we joked about it being Oslo, and then it just stuck. And he kind of fits his name. He's 6'4" and
Oh, wow.
this big around, and he's a fun kid. He's a little crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Any other question? I mean, like, I'll tell you anything you want to know about being a professional portrait photographer. It's not as glamorous as being a nature photographer, I don't think. I don't know. Might be. I don't take pictures of wildlife unless I'm in Tanzania. I always say I have to be off the continent of North America to take a wildlife picture, because then I'm stepping on my dad's territory. And it's worked out so far. But I'm willing to learn. If anyone wants to talk to me about how to take good landscapes, I would like to learn about that. Can I come to you? Are you doing any of those classes?
Well, you know about the 12 elements, because that's.
Right, but I don't know how to actually take the landscape photo, other than just holding up my camera and taking it. I know there's like information I need to know. I should probably ask my dad. A tripod. Extra equipment?
Then you have to get up early in the morning.
I don't have a problem with that. Or staying up late at night. I can do that. Yeah. But I'll do animal portraits all day long. Those are kind of fun. But weddings, that's where I live for. I live for the weddings because I love being a part of it.
Well, we need more people like you, because there's a whole bunch of photographers who wouldn't touch a wedding.
Well, if you don't love it, don't do it, right? Like, if you don't.
Now I know who to recommend.
Yeah, send it my way. If I need to get a second residency here, I'm happy to. Nebraska's fun, but Colorado's a little more fun. Don't tell anyone I said that.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And my email's up there, so if you think of a question later, you can ask me. I'll tell you anything you want to know.